Welcome back, everyone, to the LEC Summer Split. About to get into our next game, which is Misfits versus Rogue. But first, we are crowning our Kia player of the game. Trick with 42% of the votes. We have sang his praises, well, the last couple of weeks, I would say. And now the viewers are also crowning him, so good for him.
We said it was going to be important, the jungle matchup coming into this game, and it certainly seemed to be the case. Both junglers kind of battled blow for blow in the early game, but it was Trick that came out on top, and his laners were able to snowball off of that. Really
carving out his spot in Schalke 04 and for Schalke 04. But let's move on to our next matchup, Misfits versus Rogue. Yesterday, it was baptism by fire for that brand new Misfits lineup. They played their first LEC game. If you're out of the loop, the original Misfits roster that came into the Summer Split is replaced or benched, and they brought in most of their ERL roster. Now, Frosk, it's incredibly hard to take a lot away from that matchup since Splice is one of the best teams in the league, and it was very difficult for these guys.
I love your word choice there, baptism by fire. I mean, the only way that that could have gotten harder is if they started against G2. So I think what's really important here is that against this Rogue lineup, even though Rogue is on the rise, we should get a better look at what this Misfits roster is actually capable of.
Now, this is very difficult, and I realize that since we don't have a lot to go on, if you maybe think about also how they played in ERL. But one of the problems of the original Misfits roster that came into this was that there was no clear vision, no identity, who the main damage dealer was. Nothing of that was really coming out. If you had to theorize, who do you think are the upstarts that we're looking at here for Misfits?
Well, it's got to be Leader. You think it's Kirei? I mean, for me, the stars on this team are Leader and DanDan. I think that if you're looking for lanes to play through, these are the ones that they found so much success with when they did it in EU Masters and when they do it domestically. The 1-3-1 style that they typically like to play has netted them a lot of success and can catch a lot of teams off guard. The thing is, what we haven't been seeing from Leader recently is the pop-off performances that he's had, that he's made a name for himself leading up to this part in the split, and I'm hoping we finally get to see it today.
For instance, also in EU Masters, because we saw a lot of these guys in the Rogue versus Misfits matchup there, that Misfits won, and this is an example of a series where Leader did pop off.
Yeah, he managed to go in with the Z pick. Many people were like, whoa, you sure that's okay? You sure you can execute upon that? And he did so beautifully.
Anytime someone locks in a Z, everyone's like, are you sure? Is this okay? Can he do this? And he absolutely delivered. It's a very highlight-worthy performance. And as Vedius is saying, I would also love to see, like, anytime Zed gets locked in, I get very excited for that. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. But one of the issues with Leader seems to be that he has a, I don't want to call it a small champion pool, but kind of his go-to.
Predictable, maybe?
Yeah, predictable is probably a better word. His go-to champions. And if everyone knows what type of style he likes to play, that he's a feast or famine, assassin, highlight player, then it makes him very easy to prepare for.
That's true.
Yesterday, though, we did see, in my opinion, some really big highlight plays from Leader, and he had some moments that nearly won his team the game, and even secured that sneak, almost a sneak Baron against Splice.
In terms of a litmus test, I think this game versus Rogue should suit them much better. There are, of course, also a couple of not as experienced players on the Rogue roster, and it's very different than going up against Splice. Rogue, however, is turning into quite the dark horse of the LEC. They ended last in the spring split, and now they are really developing into a playoff contender. As of this moment, they are in playoffs. They are 6th. What is going so well for them?
I mean, the more tape that I see of Rogue, the more that I like them. I do want to highlight Inspired and VandeR. We're going to keep saying their names repeatedly over and over because I feel like these are kind of the key facilitators. It's like Inspired gets everyone through the lane phase. Excellent jungle pathing, very creative, very cerebral, intelligent jungler. Watch how he reads with the information that he gets and then what he does with it. But then once we're in this team fight phase, that's where VandeR really likes to shine, especially when he teams up with Inspired of setting up these plays. So champions like his Lux are things that I love to see from them.
Rogue is looking on fire right now, Sjokz, and I cannot wait to see how they develop as we transition into the second half of the split. It's fascinating because we rate this team and so many other teams here in the LEC rate them highly, yet for some reason we still feel that this could be a close game against Misfits just because of their history in EU Masters. So I'm excited to see what we see from both these teams today, because on paper, this should be heavy favorites for Rogue.
Indeed, let's see if the Rogue can keep the hype train going, or if that upstart Misfits roster gets their first win. Rogue, however, they could get a 2-0. Let's see if they can, and head over to our casters.
Thank you very much, Sjokz. It would be Rogue's first 2-0 in the LEC. Never mind this split, the entire year they haven't picked up a 2-0. Of course, they only picked up 2 wins in spring.
And they already smashed that record.
They've already doubled it. Halfway point in the split, they are in playoff contention. Misfits, on the other hand, made some drastic changes coming into this week. Yesterday, it didn't really pay off, but as they said on the analyst desk, not really the game to evaluate them from.
Yeah, I mean, they were playing Splice, one of our best teams. Now they're against Rogue, a roster they will be familiar with, as you heard on the analyst desk from EU Masters, when Misfits Gaming took the lead. Of course, it's a very different story as we get into the draft.
That it is. As we get on into draft, you have to look at those power picks. Saw how strong Karma can be in the last game. Expect to see that removed in this one. Irelia will be the first ban, and then we'll see where Misfits decide to go next. Olaf, what a surprise. Inspired 3-1 on the champion. He's got 3 times as many wins on it than anyone else in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think Inspired is easily our best Olaf player in the LEC, and he was even willing to first pick that champion yesterday. I'm sitting in the back room watching that like, this guy must be out of his mind. But then he uses it to smash Fnatic. So very good stuff out of him. He is one of the big standout players on this Rogue lineup so far this year. Will be interesting to see what he can get his hands on with that signature champ banned away.
That's the thing, right? Because he's won 3 times on it, and he's only ever won on Rek'Sai. No, wait. I'm looking at my sheet and it confused me for a second. It's Sejuani is the other pick that he has won on so far this split, so we'll see if he gets that. Azir banned out, Karma removed, Mordekaiser taken away as well. And first pick for Larssen in the mid lane is the Corki.
Yeah, we'll want to see what leader decides to take into that, of course, known as a melee, almost exclusive player in that role. So if a Nico were to be locked in, we would expect to see that in the hands of DanDan. This might just be some Sona Tarik or Sona Tahm Kench action.
We haven't seen that for a long time, though. It kind of fell out of the mess. It wasn't even being banned away too often. So Sona alongside a possible Tahm Kench, and that is what's going to be locked in straight away for Neon and Hiva in the bottom lane.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Inspired wants to go for the Sejuani that you mentioned he did get a win on earlier in this split. Typically, that's less effective against a champion like the Tahm Kench. I would actually prefer to see Inspired on something that can get a little scrappier. His Rek'Sai earlier on in the split, I really did like to see coming through from him. Something that can fight in the early game and get control around the jungle.
Other things that could be available is the Sylas, which is locked in first here for Rogue, so expect to see that in the jungle. They have a lot of power picks already. Sylas, Aatrox, and the Corki on their first rotations.
Yeah, I really like what I'm seeing so far out of the Rogue squad. Again, some late game security with that Corki and strong mid game with this Aatrox and Sylas for sure. They can also wait on that bottom lane pick. They already know what they're going to be going up against. There's a lot of counter pick opportunity on the side of Misfits, and I think the Qiyana fits right into Leader's wheelhouse, Medic.
Yep, it definitely does. Plays AD Assassins, that's what he's known for. We heard from DanDan earlier today. He's got the int out of his system. Now he's ready to party on Summoner's Rift, and what a champion to do it on. We've seen how effective it can be, but we've also seen it fall short from time to time.
We definitely have. It's a champion that when it looks good, it looks real good. And they're already setting up. I mean, we talk about team fight ultimate tools. The Qiyana next to a Sona is going to be absolutely devastating against the side of Rogue. Now, I'll be curious to see what they decide to go for in the bottom lane for Woolite. Something that we did used to see against the Sona as a pretty good option was the Varus, basically because his E would apply that Grievous Wounds, it would cut through a lot of the healing. The ultimate would also mean it was a little bit easier to set up 4 kills around that bottom lane if you did want to bring your jungler into the area.
Yeah, Woolite having played mostly Sivir, Xayah, hasn't picked the Varus yet this split, but we haven't seen it that much so far across the course of the LEC either. With Rakan taken away, we know that's probably not going to be Xayah in the bottom lane because she works too well with Rakan and not that well without him. But I would really like to see a pushing bottom lane, you know, put some pressure on. Even maybe pick something like G2, take the Morgana, take a Blitzcrank like Origin did in the spring finals.
There's definitely a lot of options here, but what's most interesting is that Rogue, like how often do you actually practice against the Sona Tahm Kench in this situation nowadays, with it falling out of players' good graces in the last few weeks here. Haven't seen that in quite a while now. And for Misfits, their opportunity is now to counterpick up in the top lane, I feel, up against this Aatrox. If they want to go for a range top laner like the Nico, perhaps, was something that DanDan was very good at back at EU Masters, but instead they can just go ahead and show an early game power jungler for Kirei. The Elise is a pick that I do think he looks quite good on meta.
He always looks very strong on these junglers that can have an impact in the early game, looking at things like Talia, like the Elise. Expect to see him making some big plays. Look towards mid. The CC lock up there from a leader with the Edge of Ishtar. If you steal away, if you terror shape the river, then you can get that CC lock. But now Rogue instead say, oh, yeah, you want to play a sustained bottom lane? We'll play some poke, we'll catch you out, and we'll get that Q into trap combo from the Lux into Caitlyn.
Exactly. There's two options, I feel like, into playing against the Sona Tahm Kench. You can either go for something that wants a hard kill, like the Varus Blitzcrank, or you go for something that can just push in and access turret plates, because it's very hard for Sona Tahm Kench to clear away the minion wave. So Lux and Caitlyn, the double range, should be able to get a lot of money off of that tower early on.
And now DanDan, this is a classic for him. I remember watching him last year. Sjokz is one of his pocket picks. Playing it in the top lane, probably into the Aatrox. We have to expect Larssen will be taking Corki mid.
Exactly. The Sjokz is a very good matchup into Aatrox. Typically, people consider it strong because come side laning later on into the game, you know, once you've got a Trinity Force and a Tiamat on this Sjokz, you should be able to just win out. You get priority over the minion wave. You win all of these extended trades up against the Aatrox. So it definitely has the ability for Misfits to unlock a sort of split push win condition for them if DanDan can get rolling.
Misfits have a good team fight with strong split push in the later game if DanDan gets ahead. Rogue have a bridging composition. They've got strong plate takes in the early game. Then they have Aatrox and Sylas in the mid game to keep them hungry, to keep them getting some kills. And then Larssen on this Corki and a Caitlyn in the late game. Unstoppable when it comes to sieging.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of their tools in the early game come through laning, and that's going to give room for Inspired to farm up in the jungle. On the side of Misfits, Kirei is going to be on a very active early game jungler through this Elise. So it'll be up to him to try and find a gank and find his mark. Looking at where he could go on around the map, you know, top lane, mid lane both look like very good options to me if he wants to get the ball rolling early on.
Misfits looking to Kirei to carry them through this early game, to get them kills on the board. Rogue looking to scale up, looking to farm, get towards those 2 items. We'll see if they can do it because Rogue are on a roll and Misfits anything but that right now. Having changed their roster this week, they'll be looking to see if this roster can bring them a little bit more success than their previous 5-man squad. And as we see Larssen there taking a deep breath, getting ready for the game, getting ready for the action, we will jump onto the Summoner's Rift once again. Second game of the day. We've crested the halfway mark of the split, and now we know that we kind of start to expect where these teams will end up. Rogue will be very confident in their ability to take a win here, but Misfits are always ready to play spoiler.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see. This is the real telling game for this Misfits squad. Now, right now, Rogue are already grouped up in an interesting position now. 3 people standing over this wall. Sylas can take that E at level 1, which will give him the double dash, including that CC. VandeR does get spotted out.
Binding lands inspired. Oh, the Spiderlings actually blocked the abduct there coming out from the Sylas. He'd absconded in. He was looking for the chain, but couldn't land it because Kirei transformed.
Now, importantly, Hiva did have to skill his Devour at level 1 too. Typically, if you want to look for a little bit of lane harass, you will go for that Tongue Lash. But in this 2 versus 2 matchup, it doesn't feel like Neon and Hiva can do all that much to fight back against Rogue, especially if he does start with that spell. If anything, it'll give him the ability to clear waves faster if he can pick up a minion. But in terms of 2v2, it's not going to be very effective.
Only really works if a binding connects, perhaps, and then you can gobble up Neon to keep him safe. Now, in case you guys can't remember how Sona Tahm Kench works in the bottom lane, Hiva will be taking the farm early on with the Relic Shield, and then when Neon gets his upgrade on the Spell Thief's Edge, he'll start taking the farm and getting himself some CS.
Don't remind me.
Some people may have not watched it for a while, okay? And it's good to keep people informed as to exactly the mechanics of these lanes.
I haven't even seen the lane play out, and I'm already getting bored you explaining how they're going to play this 2v2.
Okay. If you're bored of the bottom lane, where are we looking then? Where are these teams looking early on?
I actually think Kirei is probably the most exciting member to try and follow right off the bat because, I mean, bottom lane, it's just going to be a push fest with Woolite and VandeR harassing as best they can. If anything, we have to look towards Kirei to make a gank happen because right now I think all 3 lanes favor Rogue in the early game. We say, yes, Sjokz does outscale, but Aatrox early on is going to be much more effective in those longer trades, you know, where he can get all 3 Q procs. Sjokz just has the counter strike, which isn't going to be super effective. fighting up against Prophet, so wave control will be in his favor. Now it's up to Kirei to find a gank. I think mid lane you do have some ability, right? Because there's no cleanse on Larssen, that if leader, now that he's level 2, can pick up that water blade and look for a route. There is the ability to maneuver around this lane, but very good vision from Rogue in that bottom river to spot out this Elise.
Yeah, Kirei spotted out straight away on a ward that came down from the Rogue bottom lane. Do you want to bring attention to the fact that...
Oh my god, Kirei just flashed that wall!
Oh, wait, he flashed?
Yeah, he
went
flashed
over.
the wall!
Oh, he's just going for the fight. We wanted aggressive plays from him, but Inspired is here in time. Kirei will go up. He doesn't have anywhere to come down. Straight onto the face of Inspired. And now the fight begins. Hiva going in with a Devour. Kirei forced away, ticking down with the Ignite. Woolite will land another shot, but you don't want to flash forward any further. The binding can't quite connect.
I mean, that was almost an insane play. And then it turned out to just be an insane play. He walked over a ward that was placed after Rogue had already pushed the lane, so maybe he should have known that was in the river. I'll see that in the bottom corner of your screen right now. He was, or Kirei rather, just like, yep, I'm gonna peace out over that wall. Meanwhile, Inspired was sitting right next to him on the Krug camp, so he had an easy counter gank opportunity to get the flash out of the Spider.
Inspired was already positioning for the counter gank as well in case it did happen, so good read from Inspired there on the Misfits jungler. Maybe didn't expect the flash over the wall, but you still have to be prepared for every eventuality. That's the word I was going for.
That'll work.
Yeah. Rogue continuing to get pushed in the bottom lane, but here Kirei and Inspired are going to meet up. Hiva almost stood on a trap there. Woolite getting trades in, looking for the headshot. We'll land it onto Neon.
Yeah, I do want to point out Inspired's pathing, though. You know, after resetting there, he knows Kirei very likely going to come up towards the top side of the map. There were a lot of Rogue pings on that top side jungle. To me, that indicates that Inspired is telling his team exactly where Kirei is going to be. So he comes up knowing he has the red buff advantage over Kirei, who only had his blue buff. Also, the flash mismatch meant that Inspired was going to have more control. So he comes in, he gets the easy scuttle crab, and also calls for Prophet to put down that ward on the Misfits Krug camp. So in, 5-10 seconds when that does spawn, if Kirei were to be up there, he would be spotted out. It spawns up, he's not there, so he must be bot side.
Really good read there, and working out exactly how these junglers are tracking their opposing mans. We've already seen the bottom lane. Misfits getting peppered by bullets coming out from Woolite, and VandeR's spells slung towards them. Those turret plates starting to fall down, but teleport comes in from Neon just to get back in the lane and hold this wave where they can.
I mean, I just love the vision game from Rogue continues too, because with that push in bottom lane, VandeR walks in. He's being told this Elise is probably bot side, so he pops the vision cone, sees there's no Elise, no camps up down towards that side of the map, and then Larssen walks forward and puts that control ward up in the river. So Kirei has no way to actually enter into the river. Now that he's pathing back towards top side, they're gonna see him on that ward again. So this is just complete macro vision domination by the Rogue squad.
And this is the sort of example you bring to someone when they say, but Rogue can't be that good, right? They can't be so good at tracking the enemy man. Yes, it's against Misfits, but early game, this game is still even, and they're doing a perfect job of tracking exactly where Kirei is and shutting down one of the main win conditions for Misfits, which was Kirei getting his lanes ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, talking with some coaches in the league, they say that Inspired is a very smart jungler, and they feel he maybe plays on instincts. When I look at this game, this doesn't seem like instincts to me. He literally just knows exactly what's going on, and yes, the rest of Rogue is being called in towards this, but this is something that you don't expect to see from a team that was just
He's got smite, guys. It's fine. It's fine. VandeR's gonna have to flash this wall. Oh! Supreme display of talent. VandeR dodges back away from it, but leader's there for the chase. First blood to Misfits. And VandeR had to sacrifice himself because Inspired fell so low to the drag.
That was genuinely a zoning Qiyana ultimate right there, because VandeR had to wait for it to go. That's a very long animation time to wrap around all those walls. So the flash was delayed. It wasn't even like VandeR misplayed that. He was just stuck in that pit. And once he flashed, there was already enough time for leader to close that gap. So a nice move there from Misfits as they get that kill after losing the Ocean Drake. And they will actually be ahead in golds for the time being.
Yep, they've just got those Kleptomancy stacks down towards the bottom lane, I expect, giving them just that little bit of gold lead. It's not too much, and VandeR here is just like, oh, well, I'm not in the best of shapes. Gets walled in by the supreme display of talent. Nowhere to go apart from flashing the wall, and leader. Easy enough chase for him there across that battle line.
I will say VandeR stepped back 2 times there unnecessarily. First, as soon as he saw a Misfits member, and second, when the ultimate came through. If he just pressed S and stopped right next to that animation, he maybe had a little bit more room to try and avoid that spell, but ultimately was a little bit more respectfully needed to be from that. That means Misfits can get the kill.
Good stuff all around from Misfits to find a fight. Look at the bottom lane gold at the moment. It's about 3,700 on the side of Rogue and about 4,100 for Misfits. You have to add it up when you see a Sona Tahm Kench lane, of course, because of the split CSing that they'll do. But now with the plates falling for Rogue, they'll start to eke some of this gold back.
Yeah, and you have to remember that VandeR, while he's going to be proccing his Spell Thieves off of enemy champions, you also proc that off of turrets too. So even when Neon isn't in the lane, you're not getting that down, you can still get some money for yourself.
Leader taking a little bit of a trade there, slinging some spells towards Larssen, but Larssen just dodging back towards his tower. Has about a 12 CS lead in that mid lane with Kleptomancy on the Corki, knowing how easy it would be for him to harass a melee matchup in that mid lane. Inspired working his way up towards 6. We've highlighted him a lot, but now he needs to get towards that hijack ultimate and start stealing some spells.
Yeah, he should hit it off of this camp right now, and he had placed a ward on the enemy blue buff, so he was saying, okay, I get level 6, now I can walk into the enemy blue. My bottom lane has priority too, but Misfits are just getting out of this lane almost immediately. They should not be able to stop him though, because Kirei has sacrificed this camp. He's fully committed up towards that top side of the map, saying we can go ahead and farm these Krugs. The blue buff is not going to be the end-all, be-all for me. Leader is also being pushed under his tower pretty consistently, so it's not going to be a difference maker in that mid lane either.
What is the end-all, be-all for Kirei? Because we wanted him to get some early kills. That's what we expected. That's what we talked about a lot in pick and ban. They've got one, right? Leader, Kirei wasn't really impactful in that, didn't even pick up an assist. But at what point do we start saying that this Elise pick hasn't worked?
I mean, I think what we need to see from Kirei is him making moves with Leader. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to come right now. I would personally like to see him try to get a flash off of someone like a Larssen, but ultimately where Misfits comp can really excel is, you know, once lane assignments sort of break up and you have a Qiyana in a side lane, you can then move Kirei through the Fog of War. You also have the global ability in the Tahm Kench too. So you have a lot of tools to try and roam around and find picks, but not when you're always on a ward.
Okay, here's the thing, right? Let's just have a look down towards this bottom lane, observers, please, because I want to highlight this control ward coming out from Misfits. That's not in the bush.
Oh, no.
That's not stopping anything from being in that bush. Question mark ping did come down on it, and Kirei's just like, well, there's enough vision around here for Rogue anyway that they're going to spot me out, even if that control ward was in the right place. But when you're looking for ganks from your jungler, you need to place them in the right spot.
Yes, you do. You also need to get some control back because there's wards everywhere inside their jungle at the time being. Now, with Kirei's presence down in the bottom lane, even though he was on vision, it does mean that Woolite and VandeR do back away, so it gives time for Hiva and Neon to push out that wave. Though unfortunately, don't know if they'll be able to get that turret plate. The minions are trying to do some work here, but a laser beam from VandeR actually used to clear the wave. And the money does eventually go the way of Hiva. I was watching on my own monitor trying to figure out what was going on.
Larssen trading with the leader in the mid lane while that bot lane action did happen. Misfits with a 500 gold lead, 400 or thereabouts actually, at the 10-minute mark. Inspired's going to start up his second objective of the game in the form of the Rift Herald, and Kirei is down towards the bottom side. You said you wanted to see him burn a flash on Larssen, well that's what he's trying to do. That hasn't been successful as of yet. So playing despite of talent straight into the cocoon, Larssen can't even get away! Misfits strike the bang sink in, and Kirei takes the kill.
Beautiful gank there from Kirei, getting the setup there with the water blade from Leader. I think the ultimate from Leader went onto the wrong wall, but it was still enough to get the kill right there. Inspired does pick up the buff, but can he get away?
Gets the Rift Herald. He's trying to try and dodge away. Prophet here, DanDan on his way, but Kirei goes straight into the face of death and now goes up with the Repel. Prophet's going to flash the wall. Kirei on the chase. Stolen away, Repel, but still Inspired falls. He tried to get away. That was almost beautiful, but Inspired did not survive.
WTF, 2 spiders? What's going on here? Inspired almost getting out of that fight.
They did buff Elise in TFT. DanDan trading here onto Prophet though. Has the counter strike. Prophet's going to try and get away, but DanDan still has the flash, and Prophet's going to pop the world ender. Flash away. DanDan with the chase. 2 kills to the Jax, and that ball is well and truly rolling.
That's a little preview there of the Jax versus Aatrox matchup. You can definitely find those fights on towards him. Not even waiting for the Trinity Force. That was just one phage and a Tiamat to be able to run him down inside that lane.
Knew that Prophet had burnt the flash in that last little trade as well, so even if the Infernal Chains connected, DanDan knew he could chase in. This is looking very good for Misfits early on. You know, we said Aatrox should win the matchup top early doors, but now that DanDan has 2 kills, he's in a very strong spot. Bot lane's pretty much even as well in terms of CS and in terms of gold. And Rogue, they do scale well. They had some laning strength, but they haven't really been able to utilize it.
No, not just yet. Falling down about 2,000 at the moment, but That being said, they do have some pretty strong scaling in terms of AD carry marksman later on. Now look at that, bumped straight into the cocoon. Brilliant stuff there from Leader and Kirei. And then the roam up in towards this top side. Jungle Inspired, of course, stays a very long time to make sure he can pick that one up. Now let's see how this happens, because the first thing he does is he flashes the wall before the rappel came down. If he wanted to wait, then maybe there's not even a trade at all, but he knows he has the rappel to try and bait that damage down. He gets the 1-for-1 trade, but as you mentioned, Prophet did lose his flash, and that led to that 1v1 going the way of DanDan.
And they said on the analyst desk they thought maybe Leader could be a carry for this team. We saw him go 3-0 yesterday. Today he's having a strong performance early on as well. Woolite and VandeR push back just a little bit in the bottom lane as Hiva gets some harass in, but until we see, you know, those 2-3 item team fights that Rogue will be looking for, I'm not too concerned for them. However, Misfits have started off a lot stronger than yesterday.
Yeah, they have, and you know, Kirei now with a little bit of an experience lead, Inspired just taking over to level 8 too. So even though early game he was being spotted out at all times by Rogue, he definitely did a good job farming on up and finding those couple of kills right there. It means he has a lot more control in this map too, as Leader pushes out the middle lane, gives him the support, and also with the bottom lane from Rogue rotating up towards that top side of the map, it means it's a very free Infernal Drake for them. It's actually a little bit interesting here that they go for this play because there was no Herald for them to take. They already had it. So
yeah,
instead,
but they're going to try and use it before the plates go down.
Exactly. That's going to be the call from them. So usually what we see is they'll trade for the objectives. Right now they're trading for that Infernal Drake on the bottom side, and they are going to get this charge off for probably 3 plates here if they can get a couple extra autos in too.
And they get the plates down. This fourth one should not fall. We've got about 5 seconds. Let's see if they get it, but I don't think that's going to go down just in time. They get the tower, get 4 plates off it in total as well, so it means that they even out that gold discrepancy. Look at that top lane difference now, though. 1,000 gold in the lead is DanDan scaling up towards that Trinity Force, but the package is coming in. Larssen forces Hiva back, and Inspired's on the chase. Ace in the hole is going to hit the back of Hiva, but the chase is not on, as Hiva still has that thick skin to survive.
Now bottom lane, Kirei on the way, holding the cocoon for a very long time, but it does not connect there on towards Prophet. Just zoning him away from the tower now. DanDan has ticked over to level 11, so that 1v1, if you thought it was bad before, it's only going to get worse as time goes on.
Leader has the flank, looking for a battlefield he wants to take.
Oh,
You can't get away up to the base, but Leader will pay for it with his life. A 1-for-1 trade in a skirmish in the mid lane. Misfits still looking for it. Rogue set up towards mid. We're trying to take the tower, but can't quite find the push they want.
That was some damage right there from Leader onto the support of Rogue. Unfortunately, he trades his life in the process. No flash up for him. Still, though, the bottom lane pressure is going to continue from Kirei. He keeps shading down towards this side of the map, but Rogue got so much control over mid.
See the damage coming down onto Neon. The sustain, of course, from Sona. Tahm, Kench, not as strong as Sona. Tamic, you don't have the extra healing. Kirei looking for the catch out. Inspired, though. He's stolen away the Qiyana ultimate. What goes up must come down. Kirei knocked into the wall, and he feels the fire of the final spark. Inspired will take the kill as he brings down the chain.
And meanwhile, mid lane, Rogue also got a kill on towards Neon, so they just went all across the map right there. That's going to mean a quick tower for them in the mid lane as well. Very nice series of events there for that squad.
Kirei trying to be aggressive once again, stepping forward, but he had no vision. They hadn't done the reconnaissance, and it meant that he was stepping into darkness, and Inspired was willing to take the fight.
I mean, as strong as Kirei thinks he is right now, I don't see a world in which Elise can ever one-shot this Sylas, you know, with the shield coming through and the sustain from W as well. He also had no control over mid lane, so that play was very questionable, as just one big Infinity Edge headshot was enough damage to knock down the Sona. But again, yeah, like, what are you hoping for? Best case scenario here, you chunk out Inspired and he has to run away. Worst case, we just saw it, you have nowhere to go once you actually make that play happen.
Of course, you get a bunch of extra damage on the Sylas when you use that supreme display of talent, changing the AD ratios into AP ratios. It's a 1.7 bonus AD ratio on that, so that's a pretty darn beefy damage dealer. Leader's looking for the fight here, though, as Inspired gets caught. Abyssal Voyage coming in from Hiva. Misfits trying to play up towards the top side.
Speaking of those big AD ratios, Leader's showing it off right there, as Inspired gets a taste of what he just used to kill Kirei.
I'm reminded of Avatar with the rock bender. That's what Leader is kind of playing as right now, flinging out rocks. I can't remember the name of the character. You haven't watched Avatar.
I've never watched it.
Yeah, so I should have done this joke with a Vedius, because he would have known.
He would have.
Yeah, ping us on Twitter.
That's what makes him
Tell
so
us we're
good.
wrong. Yeah. Knowledge of anime is definitely what makes casters so good. Larssen here waiting in the wings. Leader proving he's anything but bulletproof as Larssen gets the Gatling gun to the back of the Qiyana. Kirei on his way up, but can't trade with a 4-level advantage on Larssen. Level 13 to level 9 on Kirei.
Yeah, so much damage there too. The BF sword on top of the Trinity Force right there, meaning he gets a lot down. Leader opted in towards the mobility boots, not going for a more defensive option.
Oh, the final spark connects. Inspired jumping forward, looking for the chains as Neon flashes away, but Inspired's there and sweeps Neon off the face of the earth. Heaver just about dodges away from the light binding. And now the tower is forced down once again. Woolite just acting as an artillery here, taking down turrets, trying to break the defenses of Misfits.
And the pressure will be unmatched here from Rogue. The one power point the Misfits have at the moment has to be DanDan in this bottom lane, but without control over the rest of the map, he can never step forward to take aggressive trades. Even worse, he might be caught out underneath his turret here if he overstays.
Yeah, look at where the vision is for Misfits. It's all on the top side of the map. Rogue here, 4 men strong. DanDan, you gotta sense something's in the water. Tries to jump away, but Inspired will just use the chain lash to force him back. The tower will be taken here by Rogue. What are Misfits doing on the rest of the map? There's an Infernal up in 10 seconds. At some point, you have to feel that Rogue will fight for one of those drakes.
Yeah, they're bringing all 5 members down here. It feels like they want to go for this. Leader does have his ultimate, but Larssen is basing on the other side of the map. He's probably going to have to use his teleport to get into this fight.
DanDan's on the wrong side of this, though. If the TP comes in, Rogue can take a 5v4. Here we go. Infernal's already gone. Misfits have snuck it away. And the supreme display of talent will look for the disengage. The package is on for Larssen if he wants to jump in, but that's a very deep way to dive. And Rogue will not be able to find the fight. 2 Infernals now to Misfits. They're within touching distance in terms of gold. 6 kills to 6 as we come up towards the 20-minute mark. Misfits looking very strong so far in this game.
They do have those double Infernals, but it's only going to get harder for them, it feels like. That being said, I don't think Rogue have the greatest tools to hard initiate a fight. Outside of Inspired picking up a Qiyana ultimate or a Sona ultimate in this game, their tools are very limited. So Misfits can play this more aggressive style where they go on to this objective, even though they were down in gold and they've been out-pressured for the last 5 minutes or so. It didn't feel like they had a good foothold around the map because they knew Rogue couldn't immediately jump onto them and they would have an easy time backing away unless there was some kind of flank going on. They made that quick call to pick that objective up.
I want to come back to the idea that we talked about in pick and bans after leader Yumu's Ghost Blades in here. We talked about scaling a lot. We talked about the safety of Caitlyn and Corki in the late game. Misfits do have that split push threat. They've got DanDan on Trinity Force. They've got him building up towards his next item as well with that BF sword in his pocket. Is there a balancing act that Misfits have to strike here where they could win the game through that split push pressure?
I mean, so my biggest concern for Misfits in terms of team fighting, right, is always the first thing I look at come late game is that they're almost exclusively melee champions. Yes, Elise can go range, but she's doing all of her damage in melee form. Sona, too, is the only range damage threat. So team fighting is actually a lot harder for them, especially because Rogue's team is fairly mobile. It's going to be a lot more difficult. So I think they need to put a lot more faith in towards DanDan, as you said, and that split push ability. But ultimately, the turning point for them is going to be whether or not they can control the mid lane. Because once you can control mid lane and be the first one to react to a side lane fight, that's going to give you a whole lot more pressure. Now, the opposite, or the answer to that ability is that Kirei can always cheat down towards this bottom side. Right now, Rogue don't have the confidence to step forward and siege that tier 2 tower. So if he's always playing down towards this bottom side, you can look for fights.
Map split at the moment, but DanDan joins up with his team in mid. They want to take that tower. Leader's overstepped behind enemy lines. Rogue will find him. Leader trying to dodge away here. Doesn't have a flash and doesn't have his life anymore. Larssen and Inspired team up for the kill.
Yeah, so Inspired just did exactly what I said Kirei should do in the bottom lane, but he did a top lane and got that easy kill. Of course, you sacrifice pressure on one side of the map for the other one, and Inspired is able to take advantage of that mismatch there.
It was good timing as well from Rogue because DanDan had rotated up towards mid, so even the pressure he would have had on bot lane was alleviated by the fact that he wasn't in that lane. Inspired still looking for Kirei here. He's been working in his jungle. He's stolen away the supreme display of talent, and now he's looking for the kill. Cocoon doesn't land. Kirei's burnt everything he has. Looking for the repel as he goes up. Here's Abyssal Voyage though as Tahm joins the fight. Inspired takes it up. He goes golden. You can't stop watch there. It's going to be the end of your life. He gets taken out, but the Supreme Display talent is used. Kirei devoured up by Hivo as the fight continues. Neon now joining the fight. Woolite going forward, looking for the tower, can't quite take it.
Extreme overconfidence there from Inspired, going underneath the tower. Just, he said he had the stopwatch, he thought he could make that play happen, but ultimately not enough when Kirei has the ability to repel. Hiva also entering the fight with the Abyssal Voyage to devour him up. Meant there was just too much there from Rogue.
And still very, well, honors even pretty much in this game. Misfits do have those double Infernal Drakes. Remember that as we get towards some more of these larger scale fights. It feels like we've had a lot of brief forays, some guerrilla warfare, a few skirmishes, but I'm looking forward to a big battle here, and I'm looking forward to spells flying left and right. I'm not looking forward to watching this replay, because Inspired just dived too greedily and too deep.
Yeah, don't know what to say about that one right there. Better luck next time.
It's a big XD from me. Hiva in the right spot at the right time. Talked about side lane pressure. Of course, Abyssal Voyage can always give you that. You can see the reaction speed from the Tahm. Kench gets towards his teammate. And with the Unsealed Spellbook, he's got the ability to come in and exhaust and ignite and use all of those extra utility summoner spells.
So we've talked about DanDan in a side lane a lot in this game. Draw your attention to the scoreboard because he now has his Spear of Shojin, which makes him unmatchable in a side lane with that item purchase. You can get multiple counter strikes off over and over again. It just becomes very oppressive in that 1 versus 1 up against Aatrox. So even if they were to try to send Larssen down there, I do not think that would be a good call here from Rogue. Even though you consider Larssen to be the stronger side laner, he's not going to be too effective in the 1v1 matchup.
A difficulty as well for Rogue is if they're playing towards this top side of the map, playing around Vision near the Baron with Dragon coming up in 6 seconds or so, they need to set up some bot lane control. That's what they're doing. They get the mid prior, now they come down towards here. But with DanDan on this side of the map, it can be quite hard to take those fights.
Yeah, you know, ultimately the question that remains to be answered is, will side lane pressure actually ever amount to anything? Because, yeah, DanDan got a solo kill. Yeah, he's been pushing for a while now, but he can never approach that second tier tower because it's always Rogue with control over the map. Now notice, while Rogue are grouping up for this Drake, there's a top lane split push here from Leader. So it's going to be some money into the pockets of Misfits to trade for this objective because I feel like they know that they don't match up super well in that 5v5, even though they have the gold lead.
Yeah, even though they have the gold lead though, that team fighting isn't as strong. We talked about it, you do have Sona tank, which helps out in those team fights. You've got Qiyana, who is a better team fight assassin than perhaps a Zed, but still not as powerful as going for this split push. And something we talked about in the last game was armor being stacked up against someone like a Qiyana who goes for this lethality. Have a look at Rogue. Only one Ninja Tabi sitting on them at the moment. Apart from that, no armor on the rest of the squad. If Leader finds someone, he should assassinate.
Yeah, he definitely will. And I think there's a lot of mixed damage threats coming in from Misfits that would dissuade Rogue from like all-inning on one resistance type. You know, Elise doing quite a lot. Of course, Neon now with this Lich Bane is going to be very effective. And when I say that Misfits are outmatched in the 5v5, I don't want to say that they can't win one because we're going to see a Leader ultimate, you know, possibly that just wipes Rogue out. You know, you can try to team up on these ultimates, and I think that if they can layer those two down, even a multi-man counter-strike, there are tools that Misfits do have at their disposal. I just think it's a lot more delicate to execute from their side, and that's why I would give the edge over towards Rogue.
I think that's on-point analysis there, and very easy to understand that Misfits do not have as easy a team fight composition as Rogue, who could just have this double AD carry front to back. Prophet stands on the front, Inspired steals away a couple of ultimates, and you're in a very good position. Now Misfits setting up towards the Baron. Qiyana has pushed in towards the side of this fight. They really still want this mid lane tower though. If Misfits can break this open, it just allows that split lane pressure so much more. You need to get this so you can step deeper and get those wards in.
And what Misfits are really doing right now by sending so many people towards the top side of the map is they're trying to put Leader in a position for a big ultimate. He's on a flank at the moment. Look at his positioning coming in over this wall. This is what they're setting up for. It's a bait on the Baron to set up for his multi-man ult.
Double Farsight alteration used. Now Misfits can turn back towards it, but Rogue say, okay, we'll go mid. You can go for the Nasher, but we're going to go for the tower. They'll take it, and now the rest of Rogue are going to collapse on towards this. Not the quickest Baron take here from Misfits. The final spark will find its mark, and Misfits maybe have to back away. They're still on the Baron right now. They're still doing it. Rogue trying to check everything. DanDan has the flank, 7,000 HP, but look at Leader down towards the bottom side.
Misfits have to be able to find the flank here. Leader going to try to look over this wall.
He goes in! The rest of the team aren't there, and he's just assassinated. Abyssal Voyage doesn't get there in time, and Hiva feeds himself to the wolves. The fight we expected culminated in two big misplays from Misfits.
They set everything up with Leader on the side. They made the call, but there was no team around him when he hopped over that wall. Now it's just Kirei sitting over this wall. Can he steal this Baron medic?
Misfits have looked so strong so far this game, but you have to find this steal. Kirei goes in, repels up, but he's not there. He still has the flash. Baron down to 2,000, DanDan in the pit, and maybe DanDan can do it. Look at Neon, he's going to take no profit. Kirei's dead, but DanDan's in there, and the Baron's low, and DanDan gets it, and Misfits have somehow found the fight.
Absolutely unreal. Woolite now trying to turn around, but there goes DanDan.
DanDan, so good they named him twice, takes the fight. Triple kill to Neon, and Misfits show they are still here in the LEC.
Misfits had no business around that Baron. They started it up and they threw the fight, but come up huge there with DanDan finding the flank into the pit. Rewind 1 minute here in our Alienware replay. Again, eyes on Leader coming over this wall. He sees a juicy Woolite, but where's his team? They're all stuck in the pit. They're all turning back for that objective. His ultimate does absolutely nothing. Kiva also loses his life, and that signals Rogue, easy Baron.
And this is the reason you live to fear Misfits DanDan on this Jack. This is the reason it's his pocket pit.
See this one more time. Rogue are stuck inside of this pit. So DanDan is going to flash, land the Counter-Strike onto Inspired, instantly burst him, then turn onto the Baron for the damage to get that buff as well. Not only does he finish this with a triple, he also steals the objective.
Want to give credit to Neon there as well. He fought off Profit by himself up towards the top of that fight. Was able to assist DanDan in getting those kills. He's now building up towards a Rabadon's death cap, but what a play from Misfits. Everyone was expecting Rogue to win out, and Misfits come out on top.
And now everything changes for Misfits. Now that they have the Baron buff, DanDan's split push is unlocked. He was unable to ever step up and hit towers earlier in this game. Now with those minions being so much tankier, he is completely free to do that. He goes into the top lane where the inhibitor is the turret that is exposed. And Rogue are probably gonna have to send multiple members if they wish to deal with him within the next, minute and a half that they have Baron.
And here's the thing for Rogue, you're on this winning spree. You've beaten Fnatic, you've beaten Origin, you face a Misfits who changed their squad coming into the week. I'm sure they didn't think it was an easy win, but they probably thought it was a less intense win than against someone like one of our top teams. But here, backs against the wall, this is where you prove you belong in playoffs. This is where Rogue have to show us that they're made of tougher stuff.
Misfits just trying to siege up these towers. They have the Tahm Kench to rotate to the side lanes. And I keep talking about DanDan, but I have to mention he's level 18 at the moment. Leader is the only other member in the game that's even close. Level 16 Larssen as well, but it is a massive lead for him. And now Misfits are going to try to control all areas of the map. They're going to send DanDan by himself because he's the strongest member. Kirei's going to rotate between the two-man group that's sieging mid lane and also Leader in the bottom lane because he is more vulnerable on this Qiyana, and they're going to try to crack into the base. That is the key for this composition. Can they break one turret? If yes, then the game gets so much easier.
Clock is ticking, 50 seconds left on the timer. Abyssal Voyage down towards the bottom side. Double crescendo, Leader jumps in, but the stopwatch from Inspired is good. Teleport coming in as Neon almost falls. Devour used by Hiva, but the final spot finds its mark and Leader's down. Neon's the next one to fall. VandeR still alive, but DanDan split pushing.
DanDan is still pushing in the top lane. Profit, the only one chasing forward here. Larssen's going to stay as well. Can they get this kill? It looks like yes, but they are losing their base medic.
DanDan there with Woolite has taken down the inhibitor. Triple kill goes over to Larssen. Rogue were able to defend the flank that Misfits found. But now Kirei is going to start up the Mountain Drake, and it's just time ticking away. The inhibitor was broken. That's what we wanted from the Baron push from Misfits. But did they sacrifice too much in the bottom lane?
I don't think so. With getting that inhibitor up in the top lane, it gives them more room now. Now that the Baron buff has expired, they can still continue to siege. Now DanDan's option is go down into that bottom lane and push on through. We saw that play for Misfits was not actually about getting a winning play down bottom lane. It was just about buying time for DanDan to make work and to try and pull every single member of Rogue for this place. They started off, they do have the numbers advantage, but importantly, Inspired has the Zonia's Hourglass, so he's able to survive a little bit longer than he would like to. That means Leader is caught out, he's going to die as well, and Misfits tanking up the turret will fall down through this exchange. But the important play was that they pulled Larssen down to that bottom lane, so he was no longer able to wave clear up top and defend against the DanDan push.
The problem is, for Rogue, yes, you've broken open the for Misfits, so you've broken open the inhibitor. If you can play around this pressure, then it can be very good for you. But now Rogue have double Mountain, double AD carry, and a Baron coming up in 2 minutes' time.
And Larssen is absolutely massive. After that triple kill, he is now sitting on 75% crit chance with 3 massive AD items, right? You know, you have the Trinity Force for that Sheen extra burst damage, the Infinity Edge, the Essence Reaver as well. This guy is absolutely going to rip through Misfits, who are all relatively squishy.
Misfits still in control of the game though. 4,000 gold ahead, looking very good for them right now as they push down towards this bottom lane. It's Qiyana, Leader, and DanDan on the Jax. Gonna take out this final remaining outer tower. DanDan gets given the gold. Prophet here to try and answer. Leader's gonna join the fray, but VandeR and Woolite are just around the corner. DanDan going in. Using the counter-strike, Prophet's gonna resurrect, teleport coming in, the final spark. DanDan using that counter-strike, still defending himself. Neon there, devoured up, Leader on the side. Kirei coming down from the top, he's looking for the flag.
It looks for the cocoon, it goes on towards VandeR, he's gonna use the stun there, now Leader goes to the back.
Redemption used, Inspire goes golden, but Larssen and VandeR can't do the damage, and the chases on Crescendo used, and now Misfits find 2. They've opened up the fight once again, and they are winning these battles. They're looking to win the war.
Playing around DanDan, Misfits are getting everything. This might be the last push of the game. 3 members of Rogue stand, 3 members of Rogue are left to fight against this Misfits squad.
DanDan doesn't hit the counter-strike, and he's gonna fall because of it. Larssen was able to dodge away, and now Misfits have to retreat. They're walking wounded, and Prophet's on the chase. Woolite and Larssen there as well. Kirei misses the cocoon. Rogue, are they looking for the chase? They're gonna go further. Valkyrie in, but Rogue decide, no, we're gonna defend in this 3v4.
Rogue no chasing could result in an absolute wipe here. Going too far into Misfits territory. Their backs are against the wall. 1 inhibitor, 1 Nexus turret remaining, but they live to fight another day.
This is the moment you prove you are made of the stuff of playoff contenders. I was going to say champions. I think giving Rogue that sort of banner is a little bit preemptive, but if Rogue can win a game from this far behind against a team that's playing this well, I think they prove to the world that they belong amongst the best in Europe right now.
Now, the reason it starts out so well for Misfits is because, again, DanDan so incredibly tanky, but also you have a teleport, you have a Tahm Kench to get into the fight. We're not going to have time for that because Rogue are on the Baron.
Double Mountains on the Baron, but Rogue have locked themselves in the pit. They're surrounded by walls. Neon looking for it, but already that Dragon, then Baron goes down. The flank is on.
DanDan has teleport. He's going into the base. Misfits, they are not looking to fight. They're just looking to stop these recalls. They're going to do it with Hiva in the back line.
Hiva on the back line, but he's going to fall now. The Crescendo coming out. DanDan's in the base, but Larssen's got back, and he's able to defend for the moment.
Now, DanDan still wins this battle. He's going to walk the minions in. VandeR trying to channel recall. He ends up canceling it. There's no time for Rogue here, but they are going to defend against that push.
Larsen's defended it, but now it's a 4v2. It's only Larssen and VandeR to do this. Counter-strike not yet used from DanDan going in, looking for VandeR, can't quite find it, and now Larsen's going to open up with the Gatling gun. Putting bullets into the back of DanDan, but now the rest of the team are here.
Exactly, because DanDan was creating so much pressure, Rogue had to try and run away. They could not turn to fight. 3 members are down. This is the final push for Misfits.
Kirei just wide with the cocoon, no flash on VandeR. That would have connected. Larssen there trying to clear out the way, but look at the damage coming out from Neon. He can't do it. Leader flashes in, and Misfits have done it. VandeR can't defend 1v5, and this is incredible. Misfits change their whole roster, and they take the win.
Straight out of their regional league, the LFL, 5 new players for the Misfits squad are able to find a win in their first week. It was a hard-fought game, Medic, but ultimately it came down to so much faith in the solo lane talent from this team. DanDan's split push, we identified it very early on. There was a gank, there was a kill, he got that lead he needed, and he ran away with the game.
What a way to end your 6-game losing streak against a team on the rise, against a team that beat Fnatic yesterday. Misfits show us they are made of stronger stuff today, and although it might seem far-fetched, the playoff hope for them is still alive. 3-7 at the moment. If they can get a few more wins on the board, 4 more would kind of be where we're looking. 7 wins tends to be what makes you into playoffs. If they can pick those up, if they can perform like today, they are very, very good. But we will see if they can do it. Rogue, on the other hand, will be probably a little bit disappointed. There were a few times when they took fights they didn't need to. A few times they were caught out because of vision control. And after such strong performances over the last couple of weeks, they would have been looking for that first ever 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like the first 10 minutes from Rogue was almost picture perfect from them in terms of tracking the enemy jungler and knowing exactly what was going on at all times. Unfortunately, they weren't quite able to turn that around, as see one more time the replay of Jez's storming the stage after his ERL squad got their first win on the LEC stage.
We are just lining up for an interview with DanDan after his incredible Jax performance. After that, we'll have analysis from Vedius, Frosk, and Sjokz, breaking down that match piece by piece and tell us exactly where it all went right for Misfits. And yeah, it's just a good performance. Like, it's hard to say more about it because I still think, yeah, Misfits have beaten Rogue, but you have a little bit more to prove. If they can play this well consistently, then they're challenging for that playoff.
Well, here's the thing. I got to cast this team back at EU Masters, and this is exactly the type of gameplay that they went for. It was always about finding split push plays from DanDan and Leader. A lot of their wins culminated from the fact that they would just fully pressure through the map, and I was wondering, would they bring the style to the LEC? And if they did, would it even be successful? They proved here today that it definitely can be.
Yeah, and if you were looking for people to step up, we talked about on the analyst desk, is it Leader, is it DanDan, who's the guy to really step up for this team? A few people were saying Kirei, he kind of had a weakish early game. It didn't have the impact he usually would, but then his mid laner and his top laner really stood up and were counted this game. So signs of life for Misfits, to say the least.
Definitely so, and I mean, it all came down to that one Baron fight too, right? Where DanDan got into it, because this game did not look like it was going Misfits' way at all. He literally just jumped into that pit, put the team on his back, got a triple kill, stole away the Baron. Just beautiful stuff out of the rookie.
Great stuff all around. He is an option in our Kia player of the game vote at LOL Esports on Twitter. It's him, Kirei, and Neon. DanDan, Kirei, or Neon. I think I know where it's gonna go.
Yeah, me too.
So we're not going to talk about it too much more. Let's go across to our interview with a man who is definitely going to win Kia Player of the Game. It's DanDan.
Thank you, Medic, and thank you, DanDan, for joining me. Yeah, give them a round of applause, please. They deserve it. You had an amazing game on Jax. Congrats on that. But let's rewind a bit here. You were playing in the LFL last week, and this week, actually. So what goes through your mind when your coach tells you that you're going to play in the LEC from now on?
Well, it was obviously a little bit of a shock. All of our players, we've been waiting, since we were all academy players, we've been waiting for this for 7.5 months now. So we're obviously very happy. We were prepared for it. If they wouldn't think that we wouldn't be able to play here, then we wouldn't be playing in the first place. So obviously we were like very happy, but we were also like prepared. We've been screwing the main team for like quite a while now, so yeah, just ecstatic, I suppose. And going 1-1 in the first week is really impressive from you guys. So what did you learn from this first week in the LEC? We learned that we are actually on the level of like a lot of these teams. We, since we haven't scrimmed LEC teams a lot, I suppose that we'll be learning a lot now. I think we'll be improving really, really quickly. So yeah, I'll just yeah, for us it's just a learning experience at this point, you know. Let's not lie here. You're coming during troubled times for Misfits. So what is your expectations for yourself and the team for the rest of the split? I mean, expectations are, yeah. I mean, we have to be realistic. We are 2-6 on 3-7 now, I suppose. But for us, we just look at it as a clean slate. You know, the worst thing we can do right now is just not try our best. That's the only way we lose as in a roster, because right now with this roster we just 1-1, which I think is a decent start for it's really great actually for rookie team. So yeah, like our coach told us that, you know, the only way that we lose right now is if we waste this opportunity, because yeah, we might be the next generation of like Misfits players, or they might see, okay, maybe they need to change something in the roster, maybe, you know, top lane sucks, and they have to replace it, but then at least they have like four other good players for the next split. So yeah, it's just a learning experience, and for us, yeah, just amazing all around. Let's enjoy this and make the best out of this, right? So thank you again, DanDan, and congrats on going 1-1 on your first week. And for more on this game, let's hand it over to Sjokz.
Thank you very much. We were just quoting DanDan here.
Super eloquent.
Yeah. The only thing that we could do wrong here is waste this opportunity. Yep. I think that's rules to live by in general. A 1-1 for this rookie Misfits roster also broke the losing streak of the Misfits roster, and a lot to go through after this win versus Rogue. So let's start at the beginning. We had our eye on both junglers, on Kirei and on Inspired, but it was Kirei that got the upper hand, is safe to say, in the early game.
I do also want to shout out the Elise pick. I thought that was quite clever. It felt like Rogue were trying to force them onto something like a Sejuani or a Jarvan, because they did have the Sylas jungle, but by taking the Elise, you remove a lot of that playmaking potential for Inspired to steal away a key ultimate.
Yeah, and I really liked what both junglers are doing in the early game because it felt like that Inspired's whole responsibility was to just track and limit the impact that Kirei had in the early stages of play. Whereas what Kirei was trying to do was trying to snowball as much as he possibly could.
Flashing over Dragon Walls.
I would argue that Rogue had the stronger early game because they very much mitigated the potential snowball of a Qiyana and the Jax in the laning phase. So I felt like Kirei wasn't able to have the impact that he wanted, which meant that in my eyes, Inspired did his job and he did a successful job of mitigating what Kirei was
super interesting because they got super fed and won the game in the end. So, you know, it's hard for me to look at that and say, great job. They got 3 kills and they started snowballing.
But you also, we'll get into why that happened later, but ultimately within the 0 to 10 to 15 minute mark, like Inspired had a job which was make sure that whenever Elise tries to do something, I can be there to try and mitigate it. And why he couldn't stop all of the ganks, like the most impactful one was the level 3 play bot, where he managed to, he cleared out his entire bot side jungle and was like, okay, I'm not letting an Elise punish my duo who's trying to hard push bot, and he stopped it. So I think he did a good job in the early game.
All right, but then it moved on and Elise did get a couple of kills. Leader did get a kill for himself as well, but Rogue did a very good job at then keeping control of the map and trying to swing it back in their favor.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is what makes Rogue such a good team or such a consistent team with their rise is their ability to recognize when to trade on pressure. So it was the Infernal Drake that went down right before this play, and they immediately transfer towards the top side and get Woolite up there with the TP and then make the play with the Rift Held directly into following it up with mid lane pressure.
And I think this is really good because it's a great utilization of the Caitlyn pick. Not only did they mitigate that early gank bot, but they're then able to gain an advantage up towards the top side. Notice how they've split up Misfits as well, and they quickly translate that pressure over towards the mid tower, where they're able to force a couple of summoner spells and start threatening the next tower. So it showcases that something that a lot of teams, what we've been saying, Rogue have a lot of strong fundamentals. They understand how to move around the map, how to utilize their composition, and how to utilize pressure in order to gain advantages.
And you can see some of the gap between kind of Rogue's fundamentals, especially in the mid game, and this very young Misfits roster, because there were a couple of key instances where DanDan was really strong in a side lane for a very long time, and he wasn't quite getting the mid game focus that I think he could have. So you saw Kirei constantly kind of skirting towards Rogue as Misfits were trying to figure out how to break roads very strong early to mid game. When I think if Kirei had given more time to DanDan, we would have seen that Jax pick shine much earlier on.
But it didn't matter. In fact, this is what happens around Baron, where first Misfits makes the call, the bold call, and I thought a really intelligent call, maybe, to go for Baron. But Rogue say, what the hell are you doing? But somehow they still end up with the Baron. Make sense of this.
So in my opinion, Misfits are trying to do one of two things. They're saying, listen, we either have to force a fight or we can set up a good flank for them around the Baron so we can catch them off guard, and then we can use that to snowball into the Baron. We saw this play start with Qiyana, try to engage on the flank, and it failed miserably. But then Rogue actually turn and commit to the Baron when there are still 3 members alive. Most importantly, a level 16 Jax. He shuts down the jungler immediately, and then he turns his attention towards the Baron. And this was just beautifully executed by DanDan, but also just massive oversight from the side of Rogue.
I mean, it's a high-pressure situation. These players don't have necessarily the most experience. Like, you only get so many runs at that before you have to face it in a real game-time scenario. So I like what you said, like the boldness of the call to go for it. Yeah.
At least that.
Execution on both sides was a bit of a head-scratcher sometimes, but, you know, that's something that just comes with experience.
And with that, everything was completely back to zero, right? Now they are an even footing, kind of, but then you take scaling into account, and you guys had such a fiery discussion that I'm going to try and replicate or at least get into a little bit about who had the stronger 5v5, Misfits or Rogue, in the late game. So why did you guys get so heated about it, and what were the...
Let's throw down right now.
So basically, like, my interpretation is a stronger 5v5 is one that's easier to execute, right? And so when both teams just run at each other, one team that if they were literally to just run at each other, because they have the comp from Rogue has a range advantage, it should naturally come out on top in a straight up 5v5, which means that the only way in which the Misfits team composition can win is if they find a flank. Now, they have a lot of options to do that with things like the Tahm Kench ultimate. We saw that they had utilization of the vision around Baron so they could look for these flanks. But because they needed a flank to find a team fight win, I feel like that their 5v5 would have been weaker. and harder to pull off. Instead, they should have focused on splitting up the map and utilizing the strong silence that they have.
We're actually out of time, but I'm going to go over because I want to hear Frost's rebuttal. Otherwise, it would be completely unfair.
I just felt that the team that would have had the stronger 5v5 had the stronger players on it, and Jax was a monster at that point of the game. I think if there was ever going to be a team fight scenario, especially around the Baron pit that they were playing, that it was going to be Misfits at that point of the game, especially with hard CC like the Sona, the Cocoon, the Qiyana ultimate, that they would find the fight. Like if they ever got
You're
a
never
hold
gonna
of Rogue,
find that fight.
they ripped the
Corki
They found
Caitlyn.
it multiple times.
So what happened in the bottom lane where they found the fight, they got the inhibitor, and then they
But
came
that was
back and
the
won
flank.
the game?
That was the utilization of
I
the
totally
flank.
understand
But
what you're
even
saying,
then,
but Jax
they
is level
dived the
18.
tower and killed themselves. And they won through split pushing, which is how they ultimately wanted to win in the first place.
Okay.
Hindsight analysis. He
It's
sees
not
us
hindsight. They always wanted to do that. They always wanted to split push.
I love it. I love it out of the both of you. So you know what? We're going to do what all smart people do. Let Twitter decide. So tweet with the hashtag LEC if you think either Misfits or Rogue had the better late game 5v5 comp. If they run at each other, so if either Frosk or Vedius were right. Before we go, though, I do want to give praise to Misfits. This rookie roster, they won. And not a lot of people said that they could do it. So I think we're going to have to talk a bit more about that in PGL. But now we have to move on. Coming up next, Origin are looking to take a big step towards playoffs against Vitality. See you in 4.5. We need to cool off.
Let's go!
Misfits have looked so strong so far this game, but you have to find this steal. Kirei goes in, repels up, but he's not there. He still has the flash. Baron down to 2,000. DanDan in the pit, and maybe DanDan can do it. Look at Neon. He's going to take down Profit. Kirei's dead, but DanDan's in there, and the Baron's low, and DanDan gets it, and Misfits have somehow found the fight.
Absolutely unreal. Woolite now trying to turn around, but there goes DanDan.
DanDan, so good they named him twice.
Yes. Okay, calm down.
They're trying to clear out the way, but look at the damage coming out from Neon. He can't do it. Leader flashes in, and Misfits have done it. VandeR can't defend 1v5, and this is incredible. Misfits change their whole roster, and they take the win.
Lie. My brothers don't die, we just rusty bark. I tell your girl to link me at the coffee shop. Getting freaky in the sheets, we're taking body shots. Then I finish with a facial just to top it off. Ay, my brothers don't die, we just rusty bark. I tell your girl to link me at the coffee shop. Getting freaky in the sheets, we're taking body shots. Then I finish with a facial just to top it off. Ay, you ain't got a clue, let's be honest. I had a couple seasons made a forest. I put in the work and take the profit. Looking at my girl like what a goddess. Thank God. Rule number 2, don't make the promise. If you can't keep the deal, then just be honest. I can never die, I'm Chuck Norris. The government Boris, yeah. I'm a villain, killing when I'm barring. Brothers in the hood, just like the movie that I star in. Servicing my whip, I phone the boss to bring my car in.